Hello, welcome, viewers of the internet, to the a collaboration between
Mm-hmm.
the Marvellous Mind podcast and the Activator podcast.
Wait,
You know,
cast. Yes.
a new up and coming podcast pioneered by
Mm-hmm.
the lovely Joy here. So,
Thank
Joy,
you.
what are we going to be talking about today?
I feel like today I wish to sort of talk about interdimensional states and astral realities. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty big ass topic, sure to arouse the interests of our listeners here. So, I guess, what is the astral state? What are these sort of realms to our experience, and how does one access them?
How does one experience these states?
Access. Yes. Let's go right in.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's more so like people sort of experience it in like a lot of different ways. I feel like there's a psychedelic option, and then there are like plant medicines to experiment with. These are kind of like the immediate, sort of more known options. And I feel like some people sort of do it without an external reliance of a kind, and more so they can kind of channel these states through meditation and like humming or like chanting or like singing, right? And I feel like a lot of people can also access this state while playing music, kind of like, how the shamans sort of get into this trance state just like with the instrument, because the instrument sort of has this frequency to transport you or like teleport you to like these higher realms easily. So it's like a vehicle. So there's like a lot of different ways, but yeah. You tell me, like, how does that work for you? What's your preferred medium of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think sort of meditative trance for me is like it's on a similar sort of like wavelength to the flow state, I suppose, and music is a very powerful vehicle for me when doing that. I don't I don't necessarily go sort of directly out of body when I'm like playing guitar or drumming, but I've certainly had experiences analogous to that when I've been like doing music on certain like psychedelic compounds and whatnot, and like though
Mm-hmm.
like I think sort of psychedelics are definitely amplifiers of that kind of trance like flowing fluid kind of state of consciousness where you are sort of, I don't know, it's almost like your mental filters are being sort of relaxed, so you're much more sensitive to the subtle elements of reality. And I do think that like
Mm.
these sort of trance states, they're not, I think psychedelics are very powerful agents and catalysts for providing one with sort of access to it. But I think like meditative techniques are also sort of, you know, powerful vehicles, particularly like the cultivation of meditation over time. Like, I think like if you meditate for an extended period of time, like many different years, I think you will sort of almost naturally sort of bring your awareness to this sort of position where it is in a kind of psychedelic state almost permanently, which I think is an interesting
Mm.
kind of thing,
That
you know.
is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the trance state like for you? Like when you slip into it?
Mm. So it's more like, well, I haven't done psychedelics, so it's not, I don't know what that would feel like, but I feel like for me, my sort of preferred medium is just through meditation or like light language, right? So as I speak light language, it's kind of like this vehicle to sort of get me in the trance state. And as that sort of happens, the beginning of it, it's more so I close my eyes and it's not visually inclined. Mine is more like it's a bodily feeling. Like I kind of feel very transported through my body. Like I'm not seeing colors or anything of that kind, but my consciousness very awareingly sort of shifts into this lighter density. It's almost like being in space, sort of. Like there's no gravity around me. It's very teleporty, if that makes any sense. That's the best way I could possibly describe it. Yeah, and I also hear a lot of different sounds, like this specific ringing. It always starts with the specific sort of ringing, and then it shifts to like subtler, more different sort of frequency sounds. That's also kind of how I differentiate that I've reached a particular state in the trance. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a very unique experience for me. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely like resonate with a lot of the things you said there. Like, I mean, I think like for like the listeners, like we should probably like try and clarify like what exactly like language is,
yeah,
and I know you've been sort of incorporating it into your sort of practice um, for a few months now. I've only very recently kind of started exploring it, but yeah, like
yeah.
what exactly is light language?
Yeah, so light language is basically the sort of frequency or like these bunch of sounds that naturally sort of come out of you when you're in a flow state at a certain level of frequency. Like you're so in divine flow, this sort of voice, this sound, it's like this ancient sound. It's pure sound. It's not a language. It's just kind of like the resonance of your soul, like outputting, basically. So everyone sort of, I believe that everyone has the ability to speak light language because it's sort of like your soul's true expression in a way. So it's just a matter of if you've unlocked that aspect within your soul. And yeah, it's very natural to us, in fact. It was used since ancient times to sort of communicate along with like telepathy. And yeah, I feel like a lot of people would benefit knowing about that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's definitely a like a notion that is particularly in our sort of very secular and non-religious materialist kind of culture. We don't really talk about these sort of very intuitive aspects of our being, I suppose. But like,
Hmm.
because like I hadn't really heard of light language until like you'd spoken about it really, and like, but then it makes certain sense because I mean, in the past I've seen sort of videos of shamans in shamanic trance and seen the sort of things they do, like they'd be
Hmm.
speaking almost in this kind of tongues kind of language,
Yeah.
or whether they'd be making certain sounds, like with drumming or whatever, or like certain shakers and stuff. And I guess it's
Hmm.
like it makes sense to me after like because through my own experience with like psychedelics and like meditation and stuff, like you get as you sort of enter that kind of trance state, you're shifting your awareness to a deeper sensitivity to like all the different things, like including sound especially. And like, I mean, I mean, everyone knows how sort of psychedelics influence music, like the
Hmm.
creation of music with like the Beatles, the Grateful Dead, like lots of psychedelically influenced bands. And you have to think, well, why is that? Well, it's because when you expand your mind and it's your mind's sensitivity to different things, it gives you almost like affords you sort of new domains of creativity, new
Hmm.
domains of sensing stuff. And it's like a whole play of like the patterns of vibration and the patterns of frequency and stuff. And, like, yeah, there's something very, very interesting about that. Um, and like, because when I started like exploring like the use of light language in my own meditations, like which is, it's a very sort of intuitive production of sort of sounds by your like your throat
Mm-hmm.
and your mouth, and it's quite strange because it's like you're suddenly just speaking this very ancient kind of
Yeah.
noises, and like I
Mm-hmm.
found like almost immediately there was like a potent noticeable change, like 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 I felt like face tingles and a slight sort of changes in just the aura of my chest, and it was like with certain sounds it would sort of arouse um a different feeling kind of, and then like the trance was like sort of deepening, and like the way the sort of the trance deepens for me is that like my mind goes very very silent, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like I become slightly spaced out kind of, and it's like my sort of my visually kind of like I would go almost like I'll be able to focus on a very fine point, and then it was almost just sort of like you're zoning out more and more, and like you're not looking at anything. It's like my eyes aren't darting
Exactly.
around. It's just like you
Yeah.
know, and then it's just like yeah, it's very interesting to sort of, because I'm at the very beginning of sort of like incorporating these sort of like techniques to deepen meditative kind of flow. Like, what's your experience with like extended like periods of like speaking light language? Like, how do you incorporate light language like in a deeper sort of level?
So I feel like light language is something that you sort of find naturally happening. It's not a thing that you can just start speaking on the get-go. It sort of comes from a natural space that you sort of reach within yourself. And I feel like once that sort of you place an intention that you wish to sort of experience that, it becomes more fluid in nature to come out more often, right? So just like anything else, I would say like the more you sort of speak it, or the more you sort of practice it in a way, or like you give it that open space to just sort of flow out of you, the more integrated you get with it, the more fluid it sort of gets. And like you were saying, right, like the second you speak it, you kind of felt like these changes happening in your auric field and like your body and your energetic body. It's more so because the frequency that you're emitting out, the light language, right? It's raising your frequency like to a whole other dimensional level. So that kind of invokes a lot of bodily sensations. Like for me, sometimes it's like ticklish in a very weird way. Like
Mm.
I would say like certain variants of the light language, and I would just feel warm in my body, or like I would kind of get goosebumps with like certain frequencies coming through me. So yeah, it's definitely more practice. The more acquainted you get with it, the more comfortable you are letting that aspect of yourself come out, I feel. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I guess like comfort is a very sort of important thing. It has to come out, it has to flow out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
unforced. You can't really
Yeah.
force it. It's kind of like, sometimes like I guess I like you just hear it, you just experience it. You know, there's no sort of summoning. Like your mind isn't directing it. It's not like you think it into existence. It's more
Mm-hmm.
to sort of like you empty yourself and you create that sort of space in which it sort of arrives. And like I kind of feel like it's yeah, that speaks to, I suppose, like just how intuitive it is. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's something very, it seems very mysterious to me at this point, because it's just like speaking in tongues kind of, and and into like guiding sort of these flows of energy around your body as you're sort of going to a deeper trance. And like I guess like a question that is sort of occurring to me
Mm-hmm.
right now is like, um as you speak light language and as you raise your frequency and your vibration to be able to sort of access these sort of like astral states, these more
States.
like
Mm.
higher states.
Mm-hmm.
What's the role of like light language for you in sort of in sort of accessing like entity encounters,
Mm-hmm.
interdimensional kind of stuff? You know, let's
Yeah.
pick our
I really like
let's go
that
there.
question, actually.
Mm. Good.
Yeah, that's a very exciting question for me because I basically
Mm.
use it to channel the entities. So I work very closely with the astral realms and galactic beings, sort of these beings that are beyond Earth, like they do not come from Earth. And they're star races. And there's a lot of them that you can sort of contact with. And the purpose of this is this contact with them is more so to, they kind of want to help humanity at this time to build in more technology to kind of help with like the human development and human civilization. So these entities work very closely with certain people who are more open to these frequencies. So because they're not from planet Earth, we kind of have to speak in this different language. It's like this light language is a cosmic language. So these beings are more acquainted to this form of speaking. They do not speak English, obviously.
Mm.
So you kind of have to sort of tune into these other aspects of yourself. And I feel like
Mm.
for me, as soon as a deity or like a galactic being drops into my awareness when I'm meditating, they kind of speak to me in that same light language, and I sort of happen to speak it outside of me. So it's like a interaction between me and the being through light language. And it's not that what are they saying or how do you understand it? It's not cognitive. What it is, it's pure energy. So as they speak to me in their light language, sort of, I kind of feel certain emotions. So this conversation is very sort of emotionally inclined. Like the way of perceiving that information or receiving it is more so in the way of feelings in your body. Like that's how you receive these sort of informations from the galactic beings. It's not language, it's pure intuition and energy receiving, I feel. Yeah, but that's like a very big topic. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Hmm.
no, it's interesting, like the way these sorts of other entities sort of communicate with you, and the way that you
Mm-hmm.
communicate with them is not like through the medium of language, I suppose. Like as I was like listening to you
Yeah.
speak, it like reminded me of this old sort of like Terence McKenna lecture that I'd listened to, where he described how
Mm-hmm.
when he would take DMT and would go to the sort of this other realm where he would have like these
Mm-hmm.
entities, they would almost be teaching him over time to develop this sort
Yeah.
of capacity to sing. And and as they and it was like they'd all be, the other entities would be singing, and it was kind of like as they sing they would create these sort of elaborate, fractal kind of patterns, singing
Yes.
these. And and it was like they would, I
Words,
mean, when you
sort
do
of.
DMT,
Mm.
when you do DMT, the other entities are always trying to, well, there's many different like varieties of trip, like what other people tend to describe as like other entities trying to do this, like show you stuff, show you these technologies to give you teaching, like moral
Yes,
lessons and stuff,
exactly.
and also to
Mm-hmm.
but that singing component is like, because it's interesting to me, like because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shamans, of course, like will tend to sing during their trance, as they
Exactly.
sort of navigate it. Um, yeah, and I think it's a sort of this whole sort of like this whole sort of domain of sort of contemplating these other dimensions, other
Beings.
entities with different kind
Yeah.
of natures, different manners in which
Mm-hmm.
they communicate and convey energy fundamentally. Because I mean, this is all energy. Like it really opens your eyes up to, just how sort of much variety there is and how much potential there is in consciousness and the way it can manifest. We get so sort of hooked up within this sort of this human world where we become sort of fixed and rigid, and we can't imagine anything beyond that, anything beyond language and stuff. And there's like, but then like, you
It
know,
breaks open everything.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And like for me, like psychedelics were a very sudden shift in sort of opening my mind for a short period. It was like a kind of obvious, you know, just like, oh, reality is much bigger than you could ever sort of suppose. You know,
Imagine. Yeah.
there's a whole reality that's in your very limited models of the world. But then
Mind.
you have that
Yeah.
model shattered, and then it's like some people can respond to that shattering by thinking, holy shit, you know, I can't understand anything. For other people, I suppose it just opens them up
Yeah.
to the sort of a more kind of curious exploration, just like a kind of just openness to the mystery that is, you know, them, you know, it's this, you know, this thing. But yeah, I want to sort of like ask you a bit more about like the entities, like how do entities appear to you? What's the experience with them, and like what's the variety of different entities that you encountered? Good questions.
Yeah. Yes, I love that though. So there's like a lot of different galactic beings and star races, and well, it's kind of more so that you don't sort of choose who you wish to speak to. It's more like they choose you. So it's more like there's certain beings that kind of know the journey that you're on, and they choose to sort of volunteer to work with you. And a few of these beings that have chosen me, that I specifically work with these days, is the blue avians. And the blue avians are sort of these beings that have like an eagle head, like a bird head, and like a human body. So most of these beings have like half animal, half human genetic like structures. And the blue avians come from the ancient star race of like Orion. They're like the oldest Orion beings, and they're like one of the most powerful beings out of all of them. Like they hold a lot of ancient power. So how I sort of navigate between different galactic beings, how do I identify them, right? That which one is which one in my awareness. So I kind of get like a feeling, and then I sort of see a silhouette of the being, and I hear it at the same time. Like they introduce themselves, like, oh, we're the blue avians and we've come from Orion. Like they speak very clearly to you. Like it's kind of like clear cognizance in a way from me. So I don't really know how to sort of explain that. It's like an inner knowing and clear audience too. Like I can hear them speaking to me, and everything else just goes zen. Like there is no other consciousness happening besides me and them in that moment. It's like so concentrated. It's so like focal, like that's the focal point. So it's a very strong connection for me. So I believe that's why I can receive the messages so clearly, I feel. And
Mm.
yeah, so that's basically how I identify them. And if it's somebody else, like let's say, for example, there's this other star race called Lyra, like Lyrans, right? They're like half lions and half humans. I work very closely with them and I love them. And yeah, they're beautiful. And it's almost like each of them have such a different energy. So the Lyrans are more powerful. So you will feel their energy very potently when they approach you versus the blue avians. The blue avians are more bird-like, so they're more sort of flighty and they're lighter in energy. Like their energy is less dense. But the Lyrans come on very strong. Like you know they're present with you in the room. It's not sublime. Like you will not have any doubt that that Lyran presence is in your room. Like they make their presence very known to you. So there's that. There's a lot of different characteristics to them. And yeah, it's like a deep Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole. Once you start, there's no going back. There's just no going back with it.
So like when you see the silhouette, how does that kind of appear to you, like in your vision?
It's kind of like photographic memory, if that makes any sense. It's like watching a movie. It's like watching a movie of Avatar or something, and I kind of get very clear visuals like that. It's like there's a movie playing in my head. You know how sometimes you watch your favorite movie and then you sleep at night and you close your eyes and you see the movie replaying in your consciousness? It's sort of
Yeah.
exactly like that. It's exactly like
Mm.
that. So it's very crystal clear. It's like my consciousness is on 8K, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
Like I can just see it with my eyes shut. Like it just replays, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's very hard to
Like
describe.
yeah,
Yeah, it's unique.
it's trying to talk. Yeah, it's talking. Yeah, it's trying to describe the mind's eye and our capacity for imagination, and also, like, what is triggering and eliciting our imaginations. I guess it ties into the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
of like our dreams, and in our dreams we
Yeah.
experience these, you know, extremely vivid experiences of reality. That when we're in the dream, is we forget that it's a dream. So a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and I mean, dreams are also sort of, yeah, it on a sort of a separate note to like meditative trance, meditative visionary states. Dreams are as well sort of very interesting, insightful um, pieces of information for sort of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that is, I suppose, outside of what our ego consciously um, like knows and
Creates.
experience.
Mm.
Yeah, this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that goes into the whole world of dream analysis, and which is, we're not going to go
I
down.
love
Maybe
that.
say that to. I mean, it's a very
Yeah.
deep.
It's a
Yeah,
deep
it's one thing that
topic.
I've.
Yeah.
It's yeah, definitely. Um, but like to sort of go back to sort of like these visionary kind of like images that you have.
Mm-hmm.
It is sort of
Yeah.
like point me to sort of thinking about, you know, I mean, again, psychedelics, I suppose, which, people
Mm-hmm.
often describe how sort of, the power for these compounds to induce like closed eye visuals, um, visionary kind of states. It almost sort of like
Mm-hmm.
enhances our general sort of mind's eye capabilities to, have these sort of profound images, profound patterns and stuff like that sort of
Mm-hmm.
enter into our mind. People often describe, experiencing lots of sacred geometries when they're sort of in a
Yes.
psychedelic state. And you can have that as well, like during without psychedelics, just by sort of stilling the mind and meditating and entering into that trance long enough. Um, but psychedelics was definitely like a powerful vehicle for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how that is. Like, I do remember sort of hearing about a person's ayahuasca sort of experience, and how
Oh.
they reported how, it's like their mind's eye's capacity to generate sort of remarkably beautiful complex patterns, and also to interact and manipulate with the images that they have in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
It became almost like enhanced, like to an 8K kind of resolution. And
Yes.
again,
Yeah.
it goes to this whole thing, which I suppose what we're talking about. It's like, the different extrasensory potentials of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
these sorts of capacities that are so ignored in our sort of conventional culture. We're
Yeah.
almost conditioned into a very rigid state of perceiving the world, and then we forget
Mm-hmm.
all of these ancient capacities and stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it all comes back to sort of our primary foundational experience of the world, about who you are. Like, you're looking out into this world, and we have all these sort of rigid patterns that we just go, and we can't think our way out of these patterns and stuff. But I guess sort of to continue on, like what how do these sort of, when these entities sort of appear to you in like a trance state,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
what sort of things do they generally communicate to you?
That's another good one, actually. So it's more so that I kind of channel quite a bit. So sometimes I write it down, or sometimes I just remember what they tell me. So each time it's like a different development of self that they wish to promote. Like that's how they're working with me. So it's more like a certain aspect of me that hasn't been developed. They sort of shed light on that. So they come to me and they just kind of give me these activations. What I mean by that is, so they'd ask me to kind of close my eyes and like do a hand mudra. So they would show me a visual that like do this or like have this. This is like the wisdom mudra. So they would show me the image. I would just follow the instruction. And as I do the hand mudra, each time it's a different hand mudra that they would instruct me to do. And I would be induced in a whole different realm. The hand mudras connect to like a different realm. Each of them are like differently connected. So in one of them, I was given the information of basically how to kind of perform energy healing, like how I can heal my own energy and how I can heal other people's energies. And they taught me how to do that through this activation. So I kind of saw this light, like they have this very strong rays of light, like blue or like pink. It depends which galactic being you're working with, but they kind of have this very bright rays of light. And through that light, I would see these fractals, kind of like how you would see on DMT or like psychedelics, I believe. These sort of spirally little intricate sacred geometry diagrams almost just floating around in my awareness. And I would see them come through like on me, and they would integrate into my skin and my body, like the codes they call light codes and like galactic codes coming through like the rays of light. And then after a while they would ask me to sort of just sit with the codes and sit with what has just taken place. And they usually say, like, in a couple of hours it will come down to your own consciousness, because it's all happening astrally, right? So when you come back down, like from the meditation back into your 3D human consciousness, it sort of takes time to integrate, because what they're saying and what they're describing is very high frequency. And our bodies sometimes, like, we can't hold that sort of level of frequency because we're not vibrating at that level. We're still in the 3D sort of world. So it takes time to integrate, and once it comes into consciousness, how that kind of appears to me is I would get an idea. I would just, it's kind of called like creative visions or like ideas. And I would have this idea, and then after some time, I would see the blue avian, and that's how I would link it like, oh, that's probably what the codes were doing. Like, it's an idea. And the idea could be like, oh, talk more about the 5D consciousness, or kind of like visions of like futuristic human spacecraft or something, or like technology, or like I would get this idea about crystal technology. That's the latest one I've gotten. Um, so yeah, a lot of creative visions is how it outcomes as. Yeah, that's how I would put it. Hmm.
So it's almost like you're sort of, we have this sort of basic experience of like our thoughts and our intuitions, and what sounds like you're describing is that, when you scale back or scale deeper into reality, into like the very origin of an intuitive
Mm-hmm.
insight, um, it seems that like when you sort of access these sort of higher vibrational states where there is this kind of communication of like light codes as you describe them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what exactly is like a light code, would you say?
Yes, so a light code is basically like energy codes that come from higher dimension beings or higher dimensions that kind of are these kind of atom-like codes. Like they sort of activate certain aspects or certain things within you. It's energy. It's energy in small patterns. And as soon as you absorb that, it kind of has an effect and sort of leads you to discovering more levels of consciousness. That's how I see light codes, pretty much.
Mm. So it's like it's the transference of energy
Energy
from these
codes,
from these high frequency states, which as
beings.
you
Yeah.
as you sort of descend back into the 3D world,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the accumulated communication of those energy codes would sort of manifest in like a thought or an
An
insight
idea.
or a kind of a
Exactly.
direction, and that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Exactly. That's
Um,
what I was trying to say. Yeah.
yeah, so it's
It's
like
fascinating. Really.
hmm. So it's like you say that like convening with these sort of interdimensional entities has
Mm-hmm.
a powerful impact on you for your sort of creative direction. And
Yes.
no, yeah, I mean that definitely like resonates with my own sort of experience with like meditation and psychedelics. It's not that in the moment I haven't got a clarity or to see that like I'm convening with some kind of entity, but more so that
Mm-hmm.
like um it seems that like as I sort of still and silence my mind, it will create a sort of a certain frequency of stillness, which then when a sort of thought occurs or arrives, there's a more ability for my mind to sort of just concentrate in on that thought and to have a certain like an aha moment of like, oh, I should look into this thing, or like
Mm-hmm.
um and like particularly like psychedelics are quite powerful for sort of connecting people to their deeper intuition, to the sort of the deeper, more profound patterns of their being, which they're often when they just operate on the sort of conventional three-dimensional level. I suppose
Mm-hmm.
they're going through the motions. They're almost like dissociated a bit from these sort of deeper, prof-
States.
profound,
Yeah.
profoundly meaningful kind of states, which we often just repress, because people have jobs, they have responsibilities and all that sort of stuff. It's like and there's lots of just aspects of the societies and cultures that we live in where they
Mm-hmm.
there isn't a there isn't a motivation on like on the authorities and the states to have these sort of spiritual inclinations.
Experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even in religion
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even in religion, where they became, I suppose, more interested in power games and doctrines and
Right.
rigid kind of teachings and stuff, they make people sort of forget their own
The true.
divinity
Yeah.
inside, and to replace that divinity with a kind of a symbol of a priest class, who would be the
Mm-hmm.
mediators of the divine, which is a perversion really, because we're all expressions of the universe
Divine.
by definition.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I mean, in my society, in my culture, like the priest class is being replaced with scientists. We have this sort of religion,
Mm-hmm.
this cult of
Mm-hmm.
scientism, where they are the sort of the arbiters of truth. There's only the materialist universe and all these world of like unseen dimensions and forces. It's all woo woo and like, oh, if you look into that sort of stuff, you're insane or something. But
Okay.
this cult of sorry, that's a bit mad rant for me, but it's something I had to get out
No,
now
I
because
feel you're
it's
like passionate about it. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Go
fucking
for it.
insane, really. But it's like yeah, and I mean this is why I mean psychedelics, they've been illegal in many different countries for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since like especially since like in the '60s, when they became sort of associated with a lot of like the counterculture movements, the anti-war protests, like certain peace and environmentalist movements. So and these, the reason these things were sort of made illegal, I suppose, and which as well sort of prevented a lot of scientific research, which is like a remarkable kind of censorship of research, which just delayed human consciousness evolution, I suppose. These psychedelics, they are technologies for expanding the mind into sort of different ways of experiencing and perceiving the world. So it makes you question like the state of affairs. It makes you question all the things you're taught, the way schools are designed, all that sort of stuff.
Everything.
So it's like and it ties into all these spiritual dimensions. Accessing these sort of spiritual dimension. They essentially remind you of just the mystery that is your own being. So. And of like, if people are sort of enlightened in that sort of respect, you can't fit them into sort of these matrix kind of systems as well.
Systems, yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense, like, why sort of political entities would want to suppress and repress these sorts of things to keep people locked into the more, the matrix kind of systems of organizing societies. But, we're reaching a point where psychedelic research is being opened up. People are sort of waking up for this sort of stuff. So it's interesting to sort of speculate, like, what would a more enlightened human civilization look like, where we are not just rigidly attached to the sort of materialist kind of world of just thinking that what we see, our hands and ears and sense, that's all reality is. There's nothing beyond that. It's delusional in a certain respect, it's totally detached from ancestral knowledge.
Wisdom,
The modern human is a bit insane, to be honest.
You're not a fan, clearly.
No. You can tell us by how I just kind of got a bit animated, but it's like,
it's good. I understand that.
Yeah, but like, and it's just I suppose, I don't know, like it's just like I think like we're on the cusp of the sort of materialist sort of worldview which has seemed to dominate science for a long time. I think we are on the cusp of a profound kind of shift,
awakening.
Yes,
spiritual
there's a
awakening.
profound shift of like the prevailing sort of metaphysics. We're going to go beyond this sort of weird scientism religion to a more sort of, and I think psychedelics.
State,
I think psychedelics, the exploration of these sort of meditative techniques, they're going to be a powerful kind of catalyst in sort of driving that. I think it's like a real sort of almost like merging of the wisdoms from the East and the West sort of coalescing in a kind of a new kind of science, pretty much. But I've been ranting for a while, so I'll pass the mic back to you. But any sort of like thoughts, I suppose.
I actually have a few questions for you. And also, you said like this very good thing that we're at this very pivotal cusp. I feel like humanity right now is at this very beautiful diversion, sort of, from what we've known into the unknown. And how I see that 3D consciousness and 5D consciousness. So I feel like Gaia, or like Earth, is shifting from its state of being, this low density state of being, the 3D state of being, to 5D consciousness. And humanity is shifting through it. Like, we are the ones sort of raising our frequency to that point where we all kind of have a new reality. 5D consciousness is just basically a state of reality, a new state of experience for us humans, without any of the human man-made societal pressurized sort of reality that we've been creating all these years. And I feel like it's an end of an era, and like it's the beginning of like a new state of humanity, a more awakened, spiritually inclined, unity consciousness state. We're all kind of sort of live and dwell in this peaceful harmony with each other, and we kind of return back truly are. Imagine being in that space. Imagine being in a space where everybody sort of realizes who they truly are, and they have the freedom and they have enough love to sort of let everyone exist in this harmonious environment. That's where we're heading towards, I feel like. It's really like a massive change that's happening amongst all of us, you know?
Yeah,
What do you think?
no, like, yeah, I sort of, yeah, I think sort of like the movements of civilizations over time. There's an inherent kind of there's the creation, a persistence of that pattern, and then like a destruction of that pattern to create new patterns. Like I do think that in the sort of the transition to the sort of a more kind of enlightened collective, you know,
Mm-hmm.
we you have to see the deconstruction and perhaps destruction of the current patterns, which are sort of not predicated upon that enlightened view of humanity. They're more predicated on the materialist view of humanity, of seeing humans as animals, for example, to be herded, to be coerced, manipulated for certain
Control.
social objectives. Yeah,
Mhm.
control societies. Um, I think that humans I think humans inherently sort of resist being turned to zombies to be herded like animals. I think there's a that sort of develop that kind of construction of a society that sort of herds humans like animals. I can't think I don't think it can persist indefinitely. Um,
It won't.
I think that yeah, I think it definitely doesn't, and you see that in how different people sort of are waking up to the realities of their society, to the realities of propaganda, of manipulation, mind control, especially. Like, I mean, I talk about a lot about how the drug war and about how particularly the regulation of people's access to psychedelic compounds is a form of regulation and a
Mm-hmm.
totally unjust restriction on people's sovereignty over their own mind to choose
Right.
what to do with their own mind. And it isn't it it's a powerful reflection on, I suppose, like many societies where like the legally used psychoactives tend to be alcohol and cigarettes and coffee, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
stuff like psilocybin, LSD, DMT, cannabis, they're bad, even though they have a rich medicinal history and
History.
a rich wealth of evidence for how beneficial they are, you know. But that's how a control society has to proliferate itself by restricting the consciousness of the population into these certain rigid patterns, so they don't question the system that they're integrated in. But you know, like you said, like these patterns they can't persist indefinitely because humans humans aren't meant to live in cages. They're meant to explore. They're meant to exercise sovereignty over their minds and their environments. And so it's like, yeah, it's and I think it's as well. It's interesting how in our sort of society with like marketing agencies and stuff like that, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
almost magic which is designed to tap into and reify people's egos to sell them certain products and services. Like they'll make people feel insecure about their appearance, so they have to buy sort of like beauty products or do this or that thing. It's that like there's a whole
Literally.
sort of like yeah, there's like a whole amplification of like the ego. There's a whole reification of separateness, so that people feel like they have to be in
Mm-hmm.
this rigid rat race with themselves. Like yeah, it ties up the whole thing of like, you know, a control society has to keep people in ignorance of their true nature, so that they will do these sort of addictive samsaric kind of patterns, which
Cycles.
you know just yeah. But like, if you can break that, if you can have a society where people are awake to their true nature, and people
Mm-hmm.
are engaged in sort of patterns that aren't sort of just reifying negative karma, reifying cycles of suffering, of power and coercion.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's yeah, I guess I don't have like a clear articulation into my mind of like how to what sort of that world would look like where people are more compassionate, more you know they're not as competitive, they're more collaborative. Um, I don't know how we can move to that. I guess I know like I think she is disconnected briefly, but I mean I'll sort of like continue talking until she sort of joins back. But yeah, like this movement to a more enlightened civilization, I suppose, my project with my podcast is, creating sort of a space for people to think more about their own minds, to really introspect into their own patterns. And oh, you're back now.
I'm
Thank God.
back.
Thank God.
I
Fabulous.
can't
No,
see
I
you, but
continued
I'm back.
ranting on in the.
Yeah,
Well, you can hear me at least. I think it'll be
I
fine in
can.
like the
Yeah,
recording,
it'll be
but
fine. Yeah, go on.
yeah, but like, I was just continuing to talk about just the
Mm-hmm.
ways in which our current society sort of keeps people in a state of ignorance, and so like,
Mm.
and I guess sort of I was thinking more about like how I don't have like a real clear sort of vision of what a sort of enlightened society would look like. I mean, obviously there would be significantly less suffering, significantly less competition. There wouldn't be pointless wars and bullshit power games and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I kind of I focus on like the here and now and like my what I can do to be of like service. And I think
Service.
like with the
Yeah.
internet, yeah, with the internet you can like I create this sort of podcast, this sort of space for people to think about their consciousness, to sort of awaken to their true natures and stuff. And that's
True
sort of like
nature.
you
Mm.
can it can have I think like our own individual actions that can have sort of these ripple effects. We can send out a certain frequency of enlightenment, of love, of compassion and stuff. And I prefer to send that out rather than you know bullshit. Which I
Yeah.
you open up a social media feed of
Mm-hmm.
Snapchat, or you watch the mainstream sort of TV show, and it's just bullshit. It's a lot of it is just
Yeah.
but pardon my French, but it's and I don't yeah I want to sort of criticize that, point people to become aware of like how they're being
I see that.
controlled on a
Yeah.
subconscious level,
Mm-hmm.
by all the media they consume. And that's like the shadow work. That's the shadow work that people have to do to become aware of all that repressed shit. But yeah, I've been talking a lot, so I want to sort of pass it back to you a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, no, just to add on, no, this is a very critical point that you were talking about, right? That half of us don't even have any sort of notion or idea that we're watching bullshit. It's that bad
Mm,
now. Like you just continue
yeah.
watching it, but you have no awareness whatsoever that there's more that exists because they've made it to be all that exists. It's like this simulation that we're living in almost, and it's so controlled in each and every aspect. There's freedom being stolen, I feel. Like we've been robbed of our true natures and we've been fed almost absolute controlled bullshit. It's not all bullshit. I feel like it's controlled bullshit. It's the bullshit they specifically want us to eat so we don't see the light of day of truth and
Mm,
ourselves. And I feel just as strongly as you do. And this is my rant about it. Um, yeah, no, I get that. And I feel like that's sort of my aim for the podcast as well, that, I want to bring in divinity aspects, by being an example. So I want to come here and I want to talk about the experiences that I sort of go through, like the mystical experiences, like the galactic beings and, like Merkaba. And I want to bring forth the sort of ancient wisdom for the people, and so they know I want to be a living example of like this new channel of consciousness, streaming through me, like, hey, like all of these things exist and it's happening to a person and you can sort of experience it as well. It's because that's like your soul truth. When you dive deep down, it's not that, oh, it's happening to her because she's woo woo or like she's a mystical being. This is this is human nature. Divinity is another aspect of human nature, which I don't really see a lot of people diving into or talking about, but it's more so it's time to sort of tap into your divine nature as well, you know? And I feel
Mm.
like there's a lot of shadow work stuff going on, and we kind of always stay stuck in this human, psychological, cognitive aspect, and we never really get beyond our 3D human self and our mind and our subconscious mind to the astral. Like, there is something beyond your mind. It's called the astral
Mm.
realms. It's this higher consciousness, and I feel like it's really nice to sort of have that higher force, this higher force above you. It's kind of relieving as a human to know that there is something so beyond great, the unknown, and you can sort of interact with that unknown, and you can discover more things about yourself, about the astral realms, about the existence of the universe. There's so many mysteries to sort of discover, beyond your human self. It's time to sort of go galactic in a way. Like, I would really be if people sort of point out questions to, oh, what's that being that you're talking about? That itself is an initiation. The fact that there is a curiosity there, that curiosity is enough to sort of spark that connection, And yeah,
Mm.
that's how I feel about it. Yeah, I really like bringing forth the mystical aspects, and I feel like it's very crucial. It kind of induces this spiritual awakening in people, this sense of divinity. It's so important right now. It's kind of like my mission at this point. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, no, I think it points people to realities that transcend their limited
Yes.
human body, and it transcends to their sort of their true nature. Like, people think that their entire identity is encased within this body. They are just this human. But
Mm-hmm.
it's absurd because you are the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself from a particular you know locus or perspective, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like we were there. Like, it's like, yeah, you're not just this organism. Like, and yeah, yes, this organism, this body is like the vehicle by which the universe is experiencing itself. But like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like there's this kind of like illusion of separation that it's conjured up within the organism so that it can survive, to bring food to its mouth and all that kind of stuff. So it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense how the ego does reify itself. But like, you know, I think it's interesting how, like, as soon as, like, in my own experience and the experience of many people who have undergone mystical experiences, have undergone psychedelic journeys and all that sort of stuff, how those sort of journeys, they tap you into that awareness that transcends just this organism, and you almost become merging with the wider spheres of vibrations beyond, and there's this kind of almost transcendence of the illusion of life and death. In that weird state, you start to see that, like, oh yes, this body will die eventually, but like me, fundamentally, like the universe, Christ
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, you want to use the word Brahman, Atman, that is beyond death. Life and death is just the cycles of organismic existence system, which is like these organisms are like these vehicles for nature's creativity and creating different forms and stuff. And yes, you in this sort of body right now, you are an expression of that. But it's not like you don't go anywhere. Like, when your body dies, it's not like you aren't the body. That's not your exhaustive identity. The body is just the vehicle by which the universe is experiencing itself from your own ego's particular perspective at that moment in time. And
Mhm.
yeah, no, it's I think it just goes into the sort of the question of like, what would the world look like if people were less within their egos? Like, what would the world look like if every world leader had to undergo a series of ayahuasca ceremonies before they could run a country? Like, we don't have
So
that right now. It
yeah,
would be much more, yeah, it would be a much more awake civilization. We probably wouldn't have all these ridiculous wars for
mhm,
resources, which end up with just needless suffering. Like, there would be a more conscientiousness. People would look upon another person not as someone separate to themselves, but as fundamentally them. As just you. You know, it's
tensions. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, we've just reached like the hour mark. I think that's probably a good
yeah,
place to conclude until next time, of course. But
yeah. Good.
yeah, yeah. Do you have any sort of like lasting concluding remarks from you?
Um, yeah, I feel like we're sort of like a very good bridge to these sort of topics, and I feel like I am very excited to sort of bring in more of these little ancient wisdoms. So yeah, I would say stay tuned for like more of this.
Yes, yes. Stay tuned for much more of this. It's been a pleasure. Hope everyone has enjoyed. Have a fantastic day, and
Yes.
remember, you are the universe experiencing itself.
Yeah.
Adios, adios. Ba da ba
Bye.
ba da.